The dust kicked up around the bronco's hooves as it twisted mid-air, and Tanner O'Brien held on with a grip forged from years of practice and raw determination, his body moving with the animal's fury like they were dancing partners in some violent waltz that only one of them wanted to end. The crowd roared from the wooden stands of the makeshift arena just outside Genoa, Nevada, their voices carrying across the high desert air on this scorching afternoon in July of 1887. Tanner could hear nothing but the blood pounding in his ears and the grunting of the wild horse beneath him. 8 seconds. That was all he needed. 6 more to go. The bronco twisted again, its powerful haunches bunching as it tried to throw him into the dirt one more time. When the horn finally blasted, signaling his successful ride, Tanner released his grip and pushed off, landing in the soft arena dirt with practiced ease. He rolled once and came up to his feet, dusting off his worn leather chaps as the pickup riders corralled the still bucking horse away from him. The crowd's cheers washed over him now, and he allowed himself a small smile as he retrieved his hat from where it had landed in the dirt. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Tanner O'Brien with another successful ride. 8 seconds of pure grit and determination. The announcer's voice carried across the grounds, tinny through the speaking trumpet he used to project. Tanner waved to the crowd and made his way toward the gate, his legs still vibrating from the ride. At 24 years old, he had been riding the rodeo circuit for 6 years now, traveling from town to town, living out of saddlebags and sleeping under the stars more often than not. It was a hard life, but it was the only one he wanted. The freedom of the road, the challenge of the ride, the camaraderie of his fellow cowboys. What more could a man ask for? He climbed over the rail fence and nearly collided with a woman carrying an armful of ledgers and papers. She stumbled back, and he reached out to steady her, his hands catching her shoulders. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Tanner forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the painted ladies he sometimes saw in saloons. Her dark auburn hair was pulled back in a practical bun, though several strands had escaped to frame her face. Her eyes were a startling shade of green, sharp and intelligent, and they were currently fixed on him with an expression that was decidedly unimpressed. "Watch where you are going," she said, her voice crisp and businesslike as she stepped back from his touch like it had burned her. "Sorry, madam. Didn't see you there." Tanner bent to help her gather the papers that had scattered. He glanced at the top page and saw columns of numbers and names. "You work for the rodeo." "I manage the rodeo," she corrected, snatching the papers from his hands. "Ophelia Grant. I handle all the finances, scheduling, and logistics for this entire operation, and you just made me drop next week's receipts in the dirt." "Tanner O'Brien, madam." "And again, I apologize." He tried his most charming smile, the one that usually worked on women in every town he visited. "Maybe I could make it up to you, buy you dinner tonight." Ophelia looked at him like he had just suggested she jump off a cliff. "Absolutely not. I have work to do, Mr. O'Brien. Unlike some people, I cannot spend my evenings carousing in saloons and chasing foolish pursuits. I was thinking more along the lines of a quiet meal, but if you'd rather go to a saloon, I'm game for that too," Tanner said, unable to resist teasing her a little. Her eyes narrowed. "I would not go anywhere with you if you were the last man in Nevada. Now, if you will excuse me, I have actual responsibilities to attend to." She swept past him, her skirts kicking up small clouds of dust. Tanner watched her go, puzzled and intrigued in equal measure. Most women seemed pleased by his attention. This Ophelia Grant acted like he had insulted her. "That's Miss Ophelia for you," a voice said from behind him. Tanner turned to find Charlie Morrison, one of the other riders, grinning at him. cold as January snow and twice as bitter. Been managing this rodeo for 2 years now, and I've never seen her smile once, not even crack a grin. Why's that? Tanner asked, still watching Ophelia's retreating figure as she disappeared into the small office building at the edge of the grounds. Charlie shrugged. Nobody knows. She just showed up one day, took over the books from old Walt Henderson when he retired, and she has been running things like a tight ship ever since. Does good work, I will give her that. Always pays on time, never shorts anyone, but personal, friendly, not a chance. I heard someone ask her to a church social last year, and she told him she would rather be trampled by a stampede. Tanner chuckled at that, but something nagged at him. There was a story there, hidden behind those sharp green eyes and that defensive posture. He had always been good at reading people and animals both. It was what made him such a good rider, and his gut told him that Ophelia Grant's coldness was not natural. It was armor. The question was, what was she protecting herself from? Over the next 3 days, Tanner found himself paying more attention to Ophelia than he probably should have. She was always working, always moving, her arms full of papers or her attention focused on some ledger or another. She supervised the setup of the arena obstacles, negotiated with the vendors who sold food and drink, and kept the whole operation running with efficient precision. She was also, he noticed, completely alone. While the other workers laughed and joked during breaks, Ophelia kept to herself. She ate her meals in the office, never joined the evening gatherings around the campfires, and deflected any attempt at conversation with sharp words and sharper looks. It made Tanner curious. It also made him determined. On the 4th day, after another successful ride, he found her in the office going over receipts. The small building was stuffy in the summer heat, and she had opened the window to let in what little breeze there was. Tanner knocked on the doorframe and she looked up, her expression immediately closing off when she saw who it was. "Mr. O'Brien, do you need something?" Her tone suggested she hoped the answer was no. "Just wanted to thank you for running such a good rodeo," he said easily, leaning against the doorframe. "Best organized one I have been to all year." "Thank you. Was there anything else?" She turned her attention back to her papers, dismissing him. "Actually, yes. I was wondering if you might reconsider that dinner invitation." Ophelia set down her pen with deliberate care and looked up at him. "Mr. O'Brien, I am going to save us both time and speak plainly. I am not interested in dinner. I am not interested in courtship. I am not interested in whatever it is you think might happen between us. I have work to do, and you are a distraction I neither need nor want." "Why?" Tanner asked, genuinely curious. "Why what? Why are you so against the idea? I am not talking about marriage or anything serious. Just a meal between two people, conversation, getting to know each other." Ophelia stood, and despite being several inches shorter than him, she somehow managed to look down at him. "Because I know how this story goes, Mr. O'Brien. Man meets woman. Man is charming. Woman is foolish enough to believe the charm means something. Man gets what he wants and moves on to the next town, the next rodeo, the next foolish woman. I have seen it happen a dozen times with the riders who pass through here. I will not be another notch on anyone's belt." "That's not what I am about," Tanner protested. "Is it not? Then tell me, Mr. O'Brien, how long are you planning to stay in Genoa?" He hesitated, and she nodded as if he had confirmed something. "The circuit moves on in 3 days," she continued. "You will move with it. That is what you people do. You chase the next ride, the next prize, the next thrill. There is nothing wrong with that, but do not ask me to pretend it is something it is not. You are making an awful lot of assumptions about me." "Am I?" Ophelia crossed her arms. "Tell me I am wrong." Tell me you are planning to settle down here in Genoa and put down roots." Tanner opened his mouth, then closed it again. She had him there. He had no plans to settle down anywhere. The road was his home, and he loved it. "That's what I thought," Ophelia said, but her voice was softer now, almost sad. "Please, Mr. O'Brien, just let this go. I am sure there are plenty of other women who would welcome your attention." "But I am not interested in other women," Tanner said before he could stop himself. "I am interested in you." Something flickered in her eyes, pain maybe, or fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that familiar wall of ice. "Then you are wasting your time," she said flatly. "Good day, Mr. O'Brien." It was a clear dismissal, and Tanner knew when he was beaten. For now. He tipped his hat and left the office, but his mind was already working on the problem. Because that was what Ophelia Grant had become in his head. Not an obstacle to overcome or a challenge to his pride, but a puzzle he wanted to solve. What had made her so cynical about love? Who had hurt her badly enough to make her build those walls so high? That evening, Tanner sat by the campfire with the other riders, nursing a cup of bitter coffee and only half listening to their stories. Charlie noticed his distraction and elbowed him in the ribs. "You are still thinking about her, are not you?" Charlie asked with a knowing grin. "Who, Miss Ophelia? I saw you go into her office earlier. Let me guess. She shot you down again." "Why do you call her Miss Ophelia instead of Miss Grant?" Tanner asked, deflecting the question. "Because that is what she asked us to call her when she first arrived. Said it was friendlier than Miss Grant." Charlie took a swig from his flask. "Course, she is about as friendly as a rattlesnake in a boot, so I do not know why she bothered." "There has got to be a story there," Tanner mused. "Probably. But she is not telling, and I have learned not to ask. Some people do not want to be known, Tanner. Maybe you should respect that." But Tanner could not let it go. The next morning he sought out Walt Henderson, the previous manager whom Charlie had mentioned. Walt was an older man in his 60s now, retired and living in a small house on the edge of Genoa. Tanner found him tending to a small vegetable garden in his front yard. "Mr. Henderson, I am Tanner O'Brien. I ride with the rodeo." Walt straightened up, his back creaking. "I know who you are, son. Seen you ride. You are good. What can I do for you?" "I was hoping you could tell me about Ophelia Grant." Walt's bushy eyebrows rose. "Ophelia? Why do you want to know about her?" "Because I am interested in her, and she will not give me the time of day. I thought maybe if I understood her better, I might have a chance." Walt studied him for a long moment, then gestured toward his porch. "Sit down, son. This might take a while." They settled into a pair of rocking chairs, and Walt packed his pipe with tobacco before speaking. "Ophelia showed up here 2 years ago," he began. "Came on the train from San Francisco, all alone. She had this way about her, all business and no nonsense. Came right to me and asked if I needed help with the books. Said she had experience managing accounts for a shipping company back in California." "That is quite a change from San Francisco to Genoa," Tanner observed. "That is what I thought too. But she was good at the work, better than me if I am being honest. My eyes were not what they used to be, and all those numbers used to swim on the page. She could look at a ledger and spot a mistake in seconds, so I hired her on." "Did she ever tell you why she left San Francisco?" Walt puffed on his pipe, the smoke curling in the morning air. "Not directly, no. But I picked up pieces over time. There was a man, I am sure of that. She had a look in her eyes sometimes when someone mentioned love or marriage, like she had been burned bad and was still carrying the scars. What happened to the man? Do not know. She never said, and I never asked. But I got the impression he made her promises he did not keep, or maybe he left her for someone else. Whatever it was, it changed her, made her hard." Tanner was quiet for a moment, absorbing this. "She deserves better than that. better than letting one bad experience color her whole life. Walt chuckled. You are smitten with her, are not you? I barely know her. Sometimes that is how it happens. You see someone and something just clicks. Your grandfather, he feel that way about your grandmother. Tanner smiled at the memory. His grandmother had passed when he was 12, but he still remembered the way his grandfather looked at her, like she was the sun and the moon and all the stars combined. Yes, sir. He used to say he knew the moment he saw her that she was going to be his wife. And were they happy? Very. Up until the day she died. Walt nodded. That is how it should be, but not everyone gets that lucky, and some people, they get hurt so bad they stop believing it is possible. Do you think that is what happened to Ophelia? I think she stopped believing in love, yes. Whether you can change her mind, Walt shrugged. That depends on how determined you are, son, and whether you are willing to stick around long enough to prove you are different from whoever hurt her. That was the crux of it, was it not? Tanner's whole life was built around moving from place to place. He had never stayed in one spot for more than a few weeks at a time. The thought of settling down had never even crossed his mind before. But now, talking to Walt, watching the morning sun light up the Sierra Nevada mountains in the distance, he found himself wondering what it might be like. To have a home. To have someone to come back to have Ophelia. The rodeo was scheduled to leave Genoa in 2 days. Tanner had that long to make a decision. Keep moving with the circuit, as he had always done, or take a chance on something he had never dared to want before. He spent the rest of that day and most of the next wrestling with the question. He watched Ophelia work, admiring her efficiency and competence. He noticed little things about her. The way she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear when she was concentrating. The small smile that sometimes crossed her face when she thought no one was looking. The gentleness in her hands when she checked on an injured horse in the stables. She was not cold. She was protecting herself. And Tanner found he wanted nothing more than to be someone she did not need protection from. On the final evening before the rodeo was set to move on, Tanner made his decision. He went to find the circuit boss, a gruff man named Henry Sutton who had been running the operation for 20 years. Tanner, Henry greeted him. You all packed up and ready to move out tomorrow? Actually, Henry, that is what I wanted to talk to you about. I am going to sit this next leg out, stay here in Genoa for a while. Henry's eyebrows shot up. You are what? Why? Personal reasons. This about that Grant woman, I have seen you watching her. Tanner did not bother denying it. Yes, sir, it is. Henry shook his head. Son, I have been doing this a long time and I have seen plenty of cowboys fall for pretty girls in small towns. You know what happens? They stay for a few weeks, maybe a month, then they get restless, miss the road, miss the riding. And they leave, usually breaking some poor girl's heart in the process. You sure you want to be that man? I do not know, Tanner admitted. But I know I do not want to leave without giving this a real chance. And I cannot do that if I am moving on to the next town tomorrow. Henry studied him for a long moment. You are one of my best riders, Tanner. I would hate to lose you permanently. I am not saying it is permanent, just that I need some time. If it does not work out, I will catch up with you down the line. And if it does work out, then he would have found something better than rodeo riding, something he had not even known he was looking for. But Tanner did not say that out loud. Instead, he just said, Then I guess you will need to find a new rider. Henry sighed. All right, I cannot stop you. But do not say I did not warn you. They shook hands, and Tanner felt a strange mix of excitement and terror as he walked away. He had just made the biggest decision of his life, and he had not even told Ophelia about it yet. For all he knew, she would still want nothing to do with him. But at least he would know he had tried. He found her in the office as usual, working by lamplight even though it was past 9 o'clock at night. He knocked, and she looked up with that familiar guarded expression. "Mr. O'Brien, the rodeo leaves at dawn tomorrow. Should you not be packing?" "Already done," he lied. "I wanted to talk to you." "I thought we had already covered everything there was to say." "Not quite." Tanner took a deep breath. "I am staying in Genoa." Ophelia blinked. "What? I am not leaving with the rodeo tomorrow. I am staying here." "Why would you do that?" Her voice was carefully neutral, but he saw something flicker in her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or hope, quickly squashed. "Because you were right," Tanner said, stepping into the office and closing the door behind him. "When you said I would just move on to the next town, the next rodeo. You were absolutely right. That is what I do. That is who I have always been." "Then why stay?" "Because I want to be different for you." He held up a hand before she could protest. "I know you do not believe in love. I know you think I am just another drifter looking for a good time. And maybe you are right to think that. But I am asking you, Ophelia, give me one chance to change your mind." She stared at him, and for the first time since he had met her, he saw her composure crack. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her pen. "Mr. O'Brien, I do not think you understand what you are asking." "Then explain it to me." Ophelia stood and walked to the window, looking out at the darkened rodeo grounds. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. 3 years ago, I was engaged to be married. His name was Richard Chambers. He was a merchant, successful and charming. Everything a woman could want, or so I thought. Tanner stayed silent, sensing she needed to tell this story her own way. "We were supposed to be married in June," she continued. "I had already bought my dress, sent out the invitations. My father had arranged for the church and the reception. And then, 2 weeks before the wedding, Richard came to me and said he had made a mistake, that he did not love me, that he had been seeing someone else, a woman from one of the ships that came into port. He said he was sorry, but he was going to marry her instead. Ophelia, I am so sorry." She turned to face him, and he saw the pain etched in every line of her face. The worst part was not that he left. It was that everyone had known. His friends, my friends, half of San Francisco society. They had all seen him with this other woman, and no one told me. They let me go on planning a wedding that was never going to happen. I was humiliated, pitied. I could not walk down the street without people whispering, "So you left." "I ran away," she corrected bitterly. "Came here where no one knew me or my story, where I could just work and not have to think about love or marriage or any of it. And now you do not believe love exists." "Oh, I believe it exists. I just do not believe it lasts. I do not believe it is real. I think it is just pretty words and false promises that people make when they want something, and the moment they get it, or the moment something better comes along, those promises disappear like morning mist." Tanner crossed the room to stand beside her. "My grandparents were married for 43 years. They loved each other every single day of it. My parents have been married for 26 years, and they still hold hands like newlyweds. Love is real, Ophelia, lasting love. You just have not found it yet, and you think you are it." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Mr. O'Brien, you are a rodeo cowboy. You have spent your entire adult life moving from place to place. What makes you think you can suddenly stop?" "Honestly, I do not know if I can," Tanner admitted. "I have never tried before. But I know I want to try. Because in the week I have known you, you have gotten under my skin in a way no one ever has before. You are smart and capable and strong. You are beautiful, and you do not even know it. And yes, you are prickly as a cactus, but I think that is because you are scared. And I understand being scared." "What do you have to be scared of?" Ophelia asked. "Of wanting something I have never let myself want before. A home, a future, someone to build that future with." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. She did not pull back, though she stiffened at his touch. "I am not Richard Chambers. I am not going to make you promises I cannot keep. All I am asking for is a chance. Let me take you to dinner. Let me court you proper. And if after all that you still do not believe love is real, then at least you will have had a few nice meals out of it." Ophelia looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face. He could see the war going on behind her eyes, fear against hope, past hurt against future possibility. "One dinner," she finally said. "That is all I am agreeing to." Tanner felt his heart leap, but he kept his voice calm. "One dinner tomorrow night. The rodeo leaves tomorrow. I told you I am staying. I meant it." She studied his face, looking for signs of deception. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her because she nodded. "All right, one dinner. But Mr. O'Brien, I meant what I said. I do not believe in love anymore. One dinner is not going to change that." "We will see," Tanner said with a smile. "And please call me Tanner." "Tanner," she repeated, testing the name. "All right. But I am still calling you Mr. O'Brien in public. It would not be proper otherwise." He laughed at that. After everything she had just said, she was worried about propriety, but he supposed old habits died hard. The next morning, Tanner watched the rodeo pack up and move out without him. Several of the riders gave him strange looks, and Charlie shook his hand with a grin. "You are either the bravest man I know or the biggest fool," Charlie said. "I have not decided which yet." "Maybe both," Tanner replied. "Good luck with Miss Ophelia. You are going to need it." As the dust from the departing wagon settled, Tanner turned to find Ophelia watching from the office doorway. She had been true to her word, he realized with relief. Part of him had worried she might tell the circuit boss to take him along anyway, or that she would back out of their dinner plans. But here she was, and when their eyes met, she gave him a small nod. It was not much, but it was a start. Tanner spent the rest of the day finding himself a room at the boarding house in town and securing work at the local ranch. The owner, a man named Douglas Morrison, who was Charlie's uncle, needed help breaking horses and was happy to hire an experienced rodeo rider. The pay was not as good as the rodeo circuit, but it was steady, and it would keep Tanner in Genoa. That evening he cleaned up as best he could and went to collect Ophelia from her small house near the rodeo grounds. She answered the door wearing a simple but elegant green dress that brought out the color of her eyes. Her hair was down, falling in waves past her shoulders, and Tanner had to remind himself to breathe. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you." She grabbed a shawl. "Where are we going?" "There is a restaurant on the main street, the Golden Nugget. The lady at the boarding house said it has the best food in town." The walk to the restaurant was quiet but not uncomfortable. Tanner pointed out things he had noticed around town that day, and Ophelia responded with small comments about the area's history. Nothing deep, nothing personal. Just two people getting used to being in each other's company. The restaurant was cozy, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of roasting meat filling the air. They were seated at a corner table, and Tanner ordered steak while Ophelia chose chicken with vegetables. "So," Tanner said once their drinks had arrived, "tell me about managing the rodeo. How did you learn to do all that?" Ophelia took a sip of her water. "I used to help my father with his accounts when I was younger. He owned a small bookstore, and I learned numbers before I learned to read properly. When he died, I needed work, and the shipping company was hiring someone to manage their payroll. I lied about my experience and figured it out as I went. Your father died. I am sorry. It was 6 years ago, pneumonia." She said it matter-of-factly, but Tanner heard the grief underneath. "My mother had passed when I was 12, so after my father died, I was alone. That was when I met Richard. You do not have to talk about him if you do not want to." "No, it is all right. It is in the past." But her fingers tightened around her glass. "He made me feel less alone at first. That was the appeal, I think. Not love, though I thought it was at the time. Just someone to fill the empty space my father left behind. That does not make what he did any less wrong, Tanner said gently. No, but it makes me foolish for believing it was something it was not. You were not foolish. You were hopeful. There is a difference. Their food arrived and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Tanner told her about growing up on his family's ranch in Wyoming, about learning to ride almost before he could walk. Ophelia talked about her childhood in San Francisco, the bookstore, the smell of paper and ink that she still missed sometimes. As the evening wore on, Tanner noticed her shoulders relaxing, the tight lines around her mouth softening. She even laughed once, a genuine sound that lit up her whole face. It was like watching ice melt in spring, gradual but unstoppable. When he walked her home, the moon was high and bright, casting silver light across the desert landscape. At her door, Ophelia turned to him. "Thank you for dinner." "It was nice." "Nice enough for a second one?" Tanner asked hopefully. She hesitated, and he could see her rebuilding those walls. "Tanner, I had a good time tonight, I did. But I need you to understand that this cannot go anywhere. I am not looking for a husband. I am not looking for love. I cannot be what you want. What if what I want is just to spend time with you? No expectations, no pressure, just seeing where things go." "Things do not go anywhere good," Ophelia said. "They go to heartbreak and disappointment, only if we let them." Tanner took a step closer. "Ophelia, I am not asking you to marry me. I am not asking you to trust me completely. I am just asking for another dinner, and maybe a walk sometime, and maybe we just see what happens." She looked up at him, and in the moonlight her eyes were luminous. "Why are you being so persistent?" "Because I see someone worth being persistent for." For a long moment they just stood there, and Tanner thought she might actually say yes, but then she shook her head. "I cannot. I am sorry, Tanner, I just cannot." She slipped inside and closed the door, leaving him standing on her porch. Tanner waited for the disappointment to hit, but instead he just felt determined. She had not said never. She had said she could not. And those were two very different things. Over the next 2 weeks, Tanner settled into life in Genoa. He worked at the Morrison Ranch during the day, breaking horses and mending fences. It was hard work, but honest, and he found he liked the routine of it. Coming back to the same place every night, knowing where he would sleep and what he would be doing tomorrow. He saw Ophelia around town sometimes. She was always polite but distant, never stopping to talk beyond a brief greeting. But Tanner did not push. Instead, he found small ways to show her he was serious about staying. He fixed the leaky roof on her office without being asked. When he saw her struggling to carry a heavy box of papers, he appeared at her elbow to help. He never asked for anything in return, never used these moments to try to persuade her to give him another chance. He just helped, then went on his way. One evening, about 3 weeks after he had stayed in Genoa, Tanner was having dinner at the boarding house when Ophelia walked in. She looked tired, her hair escaping its bun in messy strands, her dress dusty from a long day of work. She scanned the room, saw him, and hesitated. Tanner raised a hand in greeting but did not call her over. The choice had to be hers. After a moment, she crossed the room and stopped at his table. "May I sit?" "Of course." Tanner gestured to the empty chair across from him, trying to keep the hope off his face. Ophelia sat down and ordered coffee from the serving girl. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Ophelia said, "Why did you fix my office roof?" "It was leaking." "I know it was leaking. I was going to hire someone to fix it. Now you do not have to." She studied him, her green eyes searching his face. "Why are you still here, Tanner? The rodeo has been gone for weeks. You could have caught up with them by now. I like it here." "Do you, or are you just being stubborn?" Tanner set down his fork and gave her his full attention. "Ophelia, I am going to be honest with you. Yes, Part of why I stayed was for you. But it is not the only reason anymore. I like working at the ranch. I like knowing where I will be sleeping each night. I like having conversations with the same people instead of always being the stranger in town. I never thought I would want this kind of life, but now that I have it, I am finding I do not miss the road as much as I thought I would. But you miss it some. He could not lie to her. Some, yes, miss the thrill of the ride mostly, but not enough to leave. Not yet, Ophelia said quietly. Maybe not ever, she shook her head. You say that now, but how do you know? How does anyone know? People change, feelings change. Nothing stays the same forever. You are right, Tanner agreed. People do change, but that does not mean love changes with them. My grandparents changed over 43 years. My grandmother's hair went white. My grandfather lost most of his teeth. They both got old and frail. But their love did not change. It grew stronger. That is one story out of thousands. What about all the other stories? The ones where the man leaves or dies or falls for someone else. What about them? Yes, bad things happen. People get hurt. But that does not mean we stop trying. That does not mean we close ourselves off from ever being happy again. Ophelia's coffee arrived, and she wrapped her hands around the cup like she was cold despite the warm evening. I was happy once, and then I was not. And the difference between those two states was so painful that I do not ever want to risk feeling it again. So you are going to spend the rest of your life alone, protecting yourself from something that might never happen. Yes, she said simply. That is exactly what I am going to do. They sat in silence for a while. Tanner ate his dinner and Ophelia drank her coffee, and around them the boarding house filled with the quiet chatter of other diners. Finally, Tanner said, I am not giving up on you, you know. I wish you would. I know, but I am not going to. Why? There was real anguish in her voice now. Why can you not just leave me alone? Because you are worth fighting for, even if you do not believe that yourself. Ophelia stood abruptly, leaving coins on the table for her coffee. I need to go. Ophelia, wait. But she was already heading for the door. Tanner watched her go, his heart heavy. He was not sure how to reach her, how to break through walls that had been years in the building. But he knew he could not stop trying. The next day, Tanner was out at the ranch when Douglas Morrison called him over. Got a telegram for you, Douglas said, handing over a folded piece of paper. Came to the main house this morning. Tanner opened it curious. The telegram was from his brother Tyler back in Wyoming. Pa took a bad fall. Doc says he will be fine but needs help with the ranch for a few weeks. Can you come home? Tanner's heart sank. He needed to go back to Wyoming, there was no question about that. His father needed him. But leaving now when things with Ophelia were so fragile felt like abandoning the fight. Bad news, Douglas asked. My father was injured. I need to go home for a while. Of course, family comes first. Your job will be here when you get back. Thank you, sir. Tanner spent the rest of the day making arrangements. He would take the train north tomorrow morning. With luck, he would be back in Genoa within 3 or 4 weeks. He just hoped Ophelia would still be here when he returned. That evening he went to find her. She was at the rodeo grounds as he had expected, doing inventory in one of the equipment barns. He knocked on the barn door and she looked up from her clipboard. Tanner, what brings you here? I need to tell you something. I am leaving tomorrow. Something flashed across her face, too quick for him to identify. I see. So you are finally going back to the rodeo. No, I am going back to Wyoming. My father was injured and my family needs help with the ranch. I will be gone about 3 or 4 weeks. Oh, she set down the clipboard. I am sorry about your father. Thank you, he will be all right, but I need to be there. Of course you do. They stood looking at each other across the barn, and Tanner wished he could read her mind. Did she care that he was leaving? Was she relieved, disappointed? I will be back, he said. You do not have to make promises to me, Tanner. I am not making a promise. I am stating a fact. I will be back because my job is here. My life is here now, and you are here. Ophelia crossed her arms, that familiar defensive posture. You should not base your life around me. I have told you this cannot go anywhere. And I have told you I am not giving up. Tanner crossed the barn to stand in front of her. Ophelia, I am going to be gone for a few weeks. And in that time, I want you to think about something. Are you really happy? Living alone, keeping everyone at arm's length? Or are you just surviving? Because there is a difference. I am fine, she said, but her voice wavered. Fine is not the same as happy. He reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She did not pull away. I will be back, Ophelia. And when I come back, I hope you will have figured out that protecting yourself from pain also means protecting yourself from joy. Before he could second-guess himself, Tanner leaned down and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. She stiffened, but she did not move away. He felt her breath catch, felt the tension in her body. Then he stepped back. Goodbye, Ophelia. I will see you in a few weeks. He turned and left before she could respond, his heart pounding. He had no idea if that had been the right move or if he had just pushed her further away. But it was done now. The train ride to Wyoming gave Tanner plenty of time to think. About Ophelia, about his life, about what he wanted his future to look like. He realized with some surprise that the life he had been envisioning included Ophelia in a permanent way, not just courting her but building a life with her. Marriage, maybe children. All the things he had never wanted before. The question was, did she want those things? Could she let herself want them? His family's ranch was exactly as he remembered it. Rolling hills, endless sky, and the small house he had grown up in sitting in the middle of it all. His mother rushed out to greet him, pulling him into a fierce hug. Tanner, oh, it is so good to see you. Good to see you too, Ma. How is Pa? Ornery as ever. Doctor says he has to stay off his leg for at least a month, and you can imagine how well that is going over. Tanner found his father in the house, propped up in a chair with his leg elevated. The older man's face lit up when he saw his son. Tanner, about time you showed up. Got here as fast as I could, Pa. Tanner clasped his father's hand. What did you do to yourself? Horse through me. Can you believe it? 50 years of riding and I get tossed like a greenhorn. It happens to the best of us. Over the next few days, Tanner fell back into the rhythm of ranch life. He worked with his brother Tyler to keep things running, mending fences, tending to the horses and cattle, doing all the heavy work their father could not do. It was exhausting but satisfying. One evening, after a particularly long day, Tanner sat on the porch with his mother, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. You seem different, his mother said quietly. Different how? More settled. Like you have found something you were looking for. Tanner smiled. Maybe I have. It is a woman, is it not? His mother had always been perceptive. How did you know? Because you have the same look your father had when he was courting me, like you have seen the future and it is brighter than you expected. Tanner told her about Ophelia, about how they had met, about her past and her refusal to believe in love. His mother listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. This woman sounds like she has been hurt badly, she finally said. She has. And you love her. Tanner had not said the word out loud yet, not even to himself, but hearing his mother ask, he realized the truth of it. Yes, I love her. Does she know? I have not told her. I do not think she is ready to hear it. His mother patted his hand. Love is patient, Tanner. If she is worth waiting for, then wait, but do not wait forever. Sometimes people need a push to realize what they really want. She is so scared, Ma, scared of being hurt again. Of course she is. We all are, everyone who has ever loved and lost. But we do it anyway because the alternative is spending our lives alone, and that is no life at all. Tanner thought about that a lot over the following weeks. He worked hard on the ranch, and slowly his father recovered. But in the quiet moments, Tanner found himself thinking about Ophelia, wondering what she was doing, whether she was thinking about him, whether she missed him at all. He wrote her a letter, keeping it simple and friendly. He told her about the ranch, about his family, about the work he was doing. He did not mention love or his feelings, just kept it light. He mailed it from town and hoped she would write back. A week later, he got his reply. The letter was short, only a few lines, but it was something. Tanner, thank you for your letter. I am glad your father is recovering. Things in Genoa are much the same. The summer rodeo season is picking up, and I have been busy with preparations. I hope you are well, Ophelia. It was not much, but it was more than he had dared hope for. She had written back. That meant she had been thinking about him, at least a little. He wrote her another letter, this one a bit longer. He told her about a funny incident with one of the ranch horses, about a storm that had blown through and taken down part of the barn roof. He asked her questions about the rodeo, about her work, about her life. Her next letter was longer too. She told him about a problem with one of the vendors and how she had solved it. She mentioned a new restaurant that had opened in town. She even included a small joke about the heat. They continued writing back and forth, and with each letter, Tanner felt like he was getting to know a different side of Ophelia. The side she kept hidden behind her walls. She was funny when she let herself be. Thoughtful. She noticed small details about the world around her and described them beautifully. One letter, she wrote about watching the sunrise over the desert and how the light turned the mountains purple and gold. Another time, she described a young colt being born at the rodeo grounds and how it had stood on shaky legs and nuzzled its mother. There was tenderness in those descriptions, a softness that made Tanner's heart ache. She was not as cold and closed off as she pretended to be. She just did not let anyone see who she really was. After 4 weeks, his father was well enough to manage with just Tyler's help. Tanner said his goodbyes, promising to visit more often, and boarded the train back to Nevada. His heart was lighter than it had been in years. He was going back to Ophelia, and this time he was determined to break through her defenses once and for all. When he arrived back in Genoa, it was late afternoon. He dropped his bags at the boarding house and went straight to find Ophelia. She was in her office, as always, bent over a ledger. She looked up when he knocked, and for just a moment her face lit up. Then she caught herself and schooled her expression back to neutral. "Tanner, you are back. Told you I would be." He leaned against the doorframe, drinking in the sight of her. God, he had missed her. "How have you been?" "Busy. The summer season is always hectic. I got your letters." "I got yours too." She set down her pen. "How is your father?" "Much better. He sends his regards." "He does not know me. I told him about you. My whole family knows about you." Ophelia's eyes widened. "Why would you do that?" "Because you are important to me." Tanner pushed off the doorframe and walked into the office. "Ophelia, we have been writing to each other for a month now, and I have learned a lot about you through those letters. I have seen the real you, the person you are when you are not so busy protecting yourself. Tanner, I do not know what you think those letters meant, but I was just being friendly." "Were you?" "Because the Ophelia who wrote to me about sunrises and baby horses does not sound like someone who is just being friendly. She sounds like someone who is capable of feeling deeply, of caring, of maybe even loving if she would let herself. You are reading too much into it." "Am I?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out one of her letters, the one about the sunrise. "Listen to this. The way the light spreads across the desert reminds me that every day is a new beginning, a chance to start over and be something different than we were yesterday." Does that sound like someone who has given up on hope? Ophelia stood, her face flushing. That is private. Those letters were private. And I am not sharing them with anyone but you, but I want you to hear your own words, Ophelia. You have not given up on hope. You have just convinced yourself that you have because it feels safer. You do not know what you are talking about. Do not I? Then look me in the eye and tell me you did not miss me while I was gone. Tell me you did not think about me. Tell me that writing those letters did not make you happy, even just a little bit. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her hands were shaking. I cannot do this, she whispered. Yes, you can. You are just scared, and I understand that, Ophelia. I am scared too. But I am willing to take the risk because what we could have together is worth it. What if it is not? What if we try and it fails? What if you realize you made a mistake staying here and you leave? What if we try and it works? Tanner countered. What if we build something real and lasting? What if you finally let yourself be happy? I do not know how, Ophelia said, and there were tears in her eyes now. I do not know how to do that anymore. Tanner crossed the remaining distance between them and gently cupped her face in his hands. Then let me teach you. Let me show you that love is real, that it is worth the risk. Give me one chance, Ophelia, just one real chance. A tear slipped down her cheek and he brushed it away with his thumb. I am so tired, she said softly. Tired of being alone, tired of being angry. Tired of protecting myself from something that might not even happen. Then stop, Tanner said gently. Stop protecting yourself from me. Let me in. For a long moment they stood there, her face in his hands, her eyes searching his. Then, so slowly he almost missed it, she nodded. One chance, she whispered. Relief flooded through him. One chance. That is all I am asking. And then, because he could not help himself, because he had been wanting to do this since the moment he met her, Tanner leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle and sweet, a question more than a demand. For a second, she was still frozen. Then she melted into him, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, and she kissed him back. It was like coming home. Like everything Tanner had been searching for in all those miles of dusty roads and nameless towns had been here all along, waiting for him in this small office in Nevada. When they finally broke apart, Ophelia looked dazed. I should not have done that. Why not? Because now I am going to want to do it again. Tanner smiled. I fail to see the problem with that. She laughed, a real laugh, and the sound of it made his heart soar. You are impossible, and you are beautiful. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. And brave. And strong. And I am going to spend every day proving to you that I am not going anywhere. Over the next few months, Tanner did exactly that. He courted Ophelia properly, taking her to dinner, walking with her in the evenings, sitting with her in church on Sundays. Slowly, so gradually she probably did not even notice it happening, her walls came down. She smiled more, laughed more, started joining the other rodeo workers for meals instead of eating alone in her office. She even attended a town dance with him, though she claimed she did not know how to dance and spent most of the evening stepping on his toes. You are terrible at this, Tanner said with a laugh as she stumbled again. I warned you, Ophelia protested, but she was smiling. I do not care. I am just happy you are here with me. As the music played and they swayed together, Ophelia rested her head against his chest. I am happy too, she said softly. I did not think I could be, but I am. I told you love was real. You did. She looked up at him. I am sorry I did not believe you at first. You had your reasons. I did. But I am trying to let them go, for you, for us. That is all I can ask. The months turned into seasons. Summer gave way to fall, and the hot desert days cooled into pleasant evenings. Tanner continued working at the ranch, and Ophelia continued managing the rodeo. They spent every free moment together, building a life piece by piece. Douglas Morrison noticed the change in both of them. One day, as Tanner was finishing up work, the older man pulled him aside. "You planning on making an honest woman out of Miss Ophelia?" Douglas asked bluntly. Tanner had been thinking about that very question for weeks now. "Yes, sir, if she will have me. I suspect she will. I have seen the way she looks at you." Douglas grinned. About time someone broke through that icy exterior of hers. That evening, Tanner went into town to the jeweler. He had been saving his wages and he had enough now to buy a ring. Nothing fancy, but something beautiful, something worthy of Ophelia. He chose a simple gold band with a small emerald set in it. The jeweler wrapped it carefully, and Tanner carried it back to the boarding house, trying to figure out the best way to propose. He wanted it to be special, something she would remember. A few days later, opportunity presented itself. The rodeo grounds were hosting a fall festival, a celebration of the end of the season. There would be music and dancing and food, and the whole town would be there. Tanner asked Ophelia if she would go with him, and she agreed. She wore a new dress, a deep blue that brought out the red in her hair, and when she took his arm, Tanner felt like the luckiest man in Nevada. They walked through the festival, sampling the food and watching the various demonstrations. A group of riders performed trick riding, and children ran around with ribbons and flags. The whole scene was filled with laughter and joy. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Tanner led Ophelia away from the crowds to a quiet spot overlooking the desert. They could still hear the music and laughter in the distance, but here it was just the two of them. "This was a wonderful evening," Ophelia said, leaning against him. "Thank you for bringing me." "There is something I want to ask you," Tanner said, his heart pounding. She turned to look at him, curious. "What is it?" Tanner took a deep breath and pulled the small box from his pocket. When he opened it, revealing the ring, Ophelia's eyes went wide. "Ophelia Grant, I love you. I have loved you since the moment you told me off for making you drop your papers. You are smart and strong and beautiful, and you have taught me what it means to want a home, to want a future. I know you were hurt before. I know you stopped believing in love, but I am asking you to believe in us, in what we have built together. Will you marry me?" For a terrifying moment, Ophelia just stared at the ring, her expression unreadable. Then tears started streaming down her face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Tanner O'Brien, I will marry you." Relief and joy exploded through him. He slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss that tasted of salt from her tears and the sweet promise of their future. When they broke apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time. "I never thought I would do this again," she said, looking at the ring on her finger. "Never thought I would want to." "Neither did I," Tanner admitted. "I thought I would spend my whole life on the road, but then I met you and everything changed." "You changed my mind," Ophelia said. "You asked for one chance and you changed my mind about everything, about love, about happiness, about myself. You changed mine too. You made me want things I never knew I was missing." They stood there as the sun set completely and the stars began to appear in the vast Nevada sky. Below them, the festival continued, but up here, it was just the two of them and the life they were about to begin together. They were married 2 months later, in December of 1887. It was a small ceremony in the Genoa church, with Tanner's family making the journey from Wyoming and a handful of their friends from town in attendance. Ophelia wore a simple white dress, and Tanner thought she had never looked more beautiful. When the preacher asked him to recite his vows, Tanner spoke from the heart. "Ophelia, you taught me that home is not a place but a person. You taught me that love is worth fighting for, even when it seems impossible. I promise to spend every day of my life proving to you that you made the right choice, that love is real and lasting, that we can build something beautiful together. I love you and I always will." By the time he finished, half the church was in tears, including his mother. When it was Ophelia's turn, her voice was steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Tanner, when you first asked me for one chance, I thought you were foolish. I thought you were wasting your time on someone who was too broken to be fixed. But you showed me that I was not broken. I was just scared. You taught me how to hope again, how to trust again, how to love again. I promised to spend my life building a home with you, a family with you, a future with you. I love you more than I thought I could love anyone." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Tanner kissed her with all the love and joy he felt, and the small church erupted in applause. The reception was held at the Golden Nugget restaurant, where they had their first dinner together. They danced and ate and celebrated with their friends and family. Tanner's brother Tyler made a toast about how he never thought he would see the day Tanner settled down, and Douglas Morrison told embarrassing stories about Tanner's first weeks working at the ranch. Through it all, Tanner kept Ophelia close, unable to quite believe that she was his wife now, that this incredible woman had chosen him. As the evening wore on and the guests began to leave, Tanner and Ophelia slipped away to the small house they had rented on the edge of town. It was modest but cozy, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a parlor. They had spent the last month furnishing it together, picking out curtains and dishes and making it a home. That night, as they lay together in their bed, Ophelia traced her fingers over Tanner's face. "I am glad you were stubborn," she said softly. "Oh, if you had given up that first time I rejected you, we would not be here now. I would still be alone, convincing myself I was happy when I was really just existing. I could not give up on you. Something in me knew you were worth the fight." "What happens now?" Ophelia asked. "Now we live. We work and laugh and build a life together, maybe have a few kids if you want them." "I do want them," she admitted. "I never let myself think about it before, but I do. Then we will have them." "A whole house full of little ones running around causing trouble," Ophelia laughed. "Maybe not a whole house full, but 1 or 2 would be nice." They talked late into the night, making plans and dreaming about the future. It was everything Tanner had never known he wanted, and it was all because of the stubborn, guarded woman who had told him she did not believe in love. Life in Genoa settled into a comfortable rhythm. Tanner continued working at the Morrison Ranch, and after a few years, Douglas offered to sell him a parcel of land to start his own operation. Tanner accepted, and slowly, he and Ophelia built up a small ranch of their own. Nothing as grand as his family's place in Wyoming, but enough to support them comfortably. Ophelia continued managing the rodeo for a few more years, but as their ranch grew, she gradually transitioned to helping Tanner full-time. She turned out to have a natural talent for animal husbandry, and under her care, their small herd of horses flourished. In the spring of 1889, Ophelia gave birth to their first child, a son they named Thomas. He had Tanner's dark hair and Ophelia's green eyes, and from the moment he was born, he had both of them wrapped around his tiny finger. Tanner had never known he could love someone so fiercely and immediately. Holding his son for the first time, feeling the tiny weight of him in his arms, Tanner understood his own father in a way he never had before. "He is perfect," he whispered to Ophelia, who looked exhausted but radiant in the bed. "He is," she agreed. "Our perfect little boy." 2 years later, they had a daughter, Emma. She had Ophelia's red hair and Tanner's easy smile, and she was as stubborn as both of them combined. She and Thomas were thick as thieves, always getting into some kind of mischief around the ranch. Watching them grow up together, Tanner often thought about how different his life might have been if he had not stayed in Genoa that day. If he had just moved on with the rodeo, never looking back, he would have missed all of this. The love, the family, the home. One evening, when Thomas was 6 and Emma was 4, Tanner and Ophelia sat on their porch watching the children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. Ophelia rested her head on his shoulder and Tanner wrapped his arm around her. "You ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Regret what?" "Giving up the rodeo, the traveling, all of that excitement for this quiet life." Tanner was quiet for a moment, considering. "Sometimes I miss the riding," he admitted, "but I do not regret anything. This quiet life, as you call it, is the best thing that ever happened to me." "You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You changed my whole world," Ophelia said. "I was so determined to never let anyone in again, and you just refused to accept that. You wore me down with your persistence and your kindness." "I did not wear you down. I just helped you remember who you were before you got hurt." "Maybe," she smiled. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day when you asked me to dinner? I asked you to give me one chance to change your mind. You did more than that. You changed my life." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their children play. The air was warm and sweet with the smell of desert flowers, and in the distance, the mountains were purple shadows against the darkening sky. This was home. Not the house or the land, but this moment, this feeling, this family. Years passed, and the children grew. Thomas developed his father's love of horses and became an excellent rider. Emma surprised them both by showing a talent for numbers and helping her mother manage the ranch's accounts. They added a third child, another boy named Daniel, who came along when they least expected it. Life was not always easy. There were droughts that killed crops and dry seasons that made water scarce. There were injuries and illnesses and all the thousand small difficulties that came with ranch life. But through it all, Tanner and Ophelia faced everything together, their love growing stronger with each challenge they overcame. Tanner's parents visited often, making the journey from Wyoming to meet their grandchildren and spend time with the family. His mother particularly loved Ophelia, often remarking that she had never seen Tanner so happy. "You picked a good one," she told him during one visit, watching Ophelia teach Emma how to braid a horse's mane. "She is strong and smart and she loves you fiercely. You are lucky to have found her." "I know," Tanner said. "Every single day I know how lucky I am." When Ophelia's old rodeo grounds were sold to new management, she was asked to come back and help train the new manager. She agreed, spending a few weeks showing them the ropes. On her last day there, she stood in the office where she and Tanner had first really talked, and she thought about how much had changed. She was not that scared, lonely woman anymore. She was a wife, a mother, a rancher. She was happy. Truly, deeply happy in a way she had never thought possible again after Richard had broken her heart. Tanner had given her that. Not by forcing her to change, but by patiently showing her that it was safe to hope again. Safe to love again. That evening, she came home to find Tanner in the barn, teaching Thomas how to properly saddle a horse. He looked up when she entered, and his whole face lit up the way it always did when he saw her. "There is my beautiful wife," he said, leaving Thomas to his work and coming over to kiss her. "How did it go?" "Good. The new manager is competent. The rodeo will be fine without me." "Are you sad about it? Leaving that part of your life behind?" Ophelia thought about it. "A little," she admitted. "But mostly I am grateful. That job brought me to Genoa. It brought me to you. So I cannot be too sad about moving on from it." "Everything happens for a reason," Tanner said. "You sound like your mother," he laughed. "She has been rubbing off on me, but in this case I think she is right. I was meant to meet you. We were meant to be together. Even though I tried so hard to push you away, especially because of that. You made me work for it, which means I appreciate it more." They stood together in the barn, listening to Thomas hum as he worked and the soft sounds of the horses in their stalls. Outside, They could hear Emma playing with Daniel in the yard. This was everything. This life they had built together. This family. This love that had started with one stubborn cowboy and one guarded woman and had grown into something neither of them could have imagined. As the years continued to pass, their ranch prospered. They added more land and more horses, developing a reputation for breeding quality stock. People came from all over Nevada and beyond to buy horses from the O'Brien Ranch. Thomas grew into a fine young man and eventually took over much of the day-to-day operations of the ranch, allowing Tanner to slow down a bit. Emma married a banker from Carson City and surprised everyone by opening her own business managing accounts for local ranchers and merchants. Daniel, their youngest, developed a passion for veterinary medicine and went off to school to study, eventually returning to Genoa to open the town's first dedicated veterinary practice. Tanner and Ophelia became grandparents, watching with joy as their children started families of their own. They spent their later years in quiet contentment, still working the ranch but at a slower pace. They took long walks in the evenings, sat on the porch watching sunsets, and told stories to their grandchildren about the old days. One evening, when they were both in their 60s, Ophelia found an old letter in a trunk in the attic. It was one of the letters Tanner had sent her during those weeks he was in Wyoming helping his father. She had kept them all, tied with a ribbon and stored away. She brought it downstairs to where Tanner was sitting by the fire, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he looked over some ranch accounts that Thomas had left for him to review. "Look what I found," she said, holding up the letter. Tanner took it and smiled. "I remember writing this one. I was so worried you would not write back. I almost did not. I was so scared of what it meant if I did. But you did write back. That was the first time I really believed I had a chance." Ophelia sat down beside him, leaning into his warmth. "Do you remember asking me if I ever regretted giving up my walls, letting you in?" "I do." "I never answered properly. So I am telling you now. No, not for a single moment. You gave me a life I never dreamed I could have. You gave me love and family and happiness. You gave me everything." Tanner set aside his papers and pulled her close. "You gave me the same, Ophelia. Before you, I did not even know what I was looking for. I thought the road and the rodeo were enough. But you showed me what it meant to have a home, a real home. We built it together. We did." They sat by the fire, holding each other, watching the flames dance. Outside, the Nevada night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the vast sky like diamonds. Somewhere in the house, they could hear their grandchildren playing, their voices carrying through the walls. This was the life Tanner had promised Ophelia on that day he asked for one chance. A life built on love and trust, and the courage to believe that happiness was possible. A life neither of them had expected but both of them had fought for, and it had been worth every moment. As they sat there in the firelight, Tanner thought back to that day in the dusty rodeo arena when he had first seen Ophelia. How she had looked at him with such suspicion and disdain. How she had built her walls so high he could barely see the woman behind them. He had been right not to give up. Right to stay in Genoa. Right to fight for her, even when she fought against him, because love was not something that just happened. It was something you worked for, something you built day by day through small actions and big gestures, through patience and persistence, through showing up, even when it was hard. That was what he had done for Ophelia, and in return, she had given him everything he had never known he needed. Years later, when their story was told to grandchildren and great-grandchildren, it always started the same way. With a stubborn rodeo cowboy who refused to take no for an answer and a guarded woman who did not believe in love. And it always ended the same way, too. With two people who found their home in each other and built a life that lasted long after the last ride, the last sunset, the last breath. Because some loves are meant to last forever, and theirs was one of them. On a warm spring day when Tanner was 72, he and Ophelia took one of their usual evening walks. They had been doing this for years now, walking the perimeter of their property hand in hand, talking about nothing and everything. Their steps were slower now, their bodies showing the wear of decades of hard work, but the love between them was as strong as ever. They stopped at their favorite spot, a small rise that overlooked the ranch. They could see the house they had built, the barns and corrals, the horses grazing in the fields. In the distance, the mountains stood eternal and unchanging. "We did good, did not we?" Ophelia said, leaning against him. "We did," Tanner agreed. "Better than good. We did amazing. All because you would not take no for an answer. All because you finally said yes." She laughed, and the sound was still as beautiful to him as it had been 40 years ago. "I am glad I did. Say yes to you was the best decision I ever made." "Second best," Tanner corrected. "First was agreeing to that one chance I asked for. True. That was where it all started." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you, Tanner, for not giving up on me, for showing me that love was real. Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your heart." They stood there as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and Tanner thought about all the moments that had led them here. Every choice, every decision, every small act of courage that had built this life they shared. He had asked for one chance and she had given it to him, and from that single chance they had built a lifetime of love. That was all it took. One chance. One moment of courage. One decision to believe that maybe, just maybe, happiness was possible. And from that one chance, everything else followed. The love, the family, the home. All of it grew from that single seed planted on a dusty day in Genoa, Nevada, when a rodeo cowboy met a woman who did not believe in love and said, "Give me one chance to change your mind." He had changed her mind. And she had changed his life. And together, they had built something beautiful. The end.